No, I'm not bothered that I haven't won an Oscar because, frankly, there's still time, perhaps someday, to win one.
One of the most successful filmmakers in history, Mr. Steven Spielberg, has been riding a rather large wave this year with the release of his latest on-screen treasure, The Fabelmans. Stick around until the end to learn everything there is to know about it. Welcome back to our favorite edition of Where Are They Now? I'm your host Michaela, here to break it all down. Academy Award-winning director, filmmaker, and producer Steven is popularly known and widely loved for being the genius behind a slew of Hollywood's biggest blockbusters from the late 20th century into the early 21st century. This renowned name in Hollywood is also one of the most known in the industry and is regarded as one of the entertainment world's most influential directors in all of movie-making history. Having worked for over 4 decades, Steven has been a contributor to numerous different genres and themes in his films, including adventure and science fiction, as well as historical features. Steven's versatility in his work has allowed him to steadily keep at it on successful films throughout his life. He's been awarded and nominated with endless achievements over the time span of his career, as his work grasps the capability of reaching individuals of various interests and backgrounds. Steven's been a large box office dominator as he sets numerous records, locking in the standard for what it takes and means to be a blockbuster smasher. The filmmaker revolutionized the sci-fi genre through special effects included in films like E.T. the Extraterrestrial and Jurassic Park. Over time, Steven became a directive champion for humanistic causes, as his projects deeply focused on a widespread of those issues. What is your favorite film of Steven's? Share your thoughts in the comments and let's jump right in. Steven was born in Cincinnati, Ohio on December 18, 1946, to his late restaurateur and concert pianist mother, Leah Aller Posner, and his late electrical engineer father, Arnold Spielberg. He was raised as an Orthodox Jew, attending Hebrew school between 1953 and 1957, and was a subject of bullying and prejudice due to his family's religious practice and beliefs. As a kid, Steven immediately jumped into directing and creating his first short films. In 1958, the director received a photographic merit badge as a Boy Scout for the creation of a 9-minute film titled The Last Gunfight. At 13 years old, Steven won a prize for Escape to Nowhere, a 40-minute film centered around an East African battle. In 1963, Steven penned and directed his first independent movie, a 140-minute sci-fi film called Firelight. Steven was a California State University Long Beach attendant, but dropped out in 1969 to pursue his entertainment career. He married his ex-wife, Amy Irving, from 1985 to 1989, and the former couple welcomed one child named Max Samuel. He and his current wife, Kate Capshaw, met on the set of Indiana Jones's Temple of Doom. They tied the knot in 1991 and welcomed 5 children, with 2 being adoptive and 3 being biological. 35 years after his initial enrollment into college, Steven completed his degree in independent studies back in 2002 and received a Bachelor of Arts for Long Beach's Film Production and Electronic Arts program. The first full-length commissioned film Steven directed was Malcolm Winkler, which reportedly crumbled due to difficulties with casting the leading male role. After this, Steven's first official film ended up being a 26-minute production titled Amblin, which was produced back in 1968 when the then budding filmmaker worked as a Universal Studios intern. 1969 was the year Steven landed his first professional TV job to direct a portion of The Night Gallery's pilot episode, starring Joan Crawford. After Steven managed to wow Universal Studios with his full-term project from an episode of The Name of the Game titled LA 2017, Steven signed a contract with the studio to direct 4 films. Steven started with 1975's Jaws, which was his first successor as it grossed more than $470 million in worldwide box office sales and pushed Steven directly into mainstream success. He continued the high with Close Encounters of the Third Kind, a 1977 film both penned and directed by Steven, and earned him his first ever Best Director nomination from the Academy Awards. The highly talented filmmaker's next move was 1981's Raiders of the Lost Ark, which served as Indiana Jones's first movie where Harrison Ford starred in the film. The year after, he directed the E.T. movie, which marked itself as the highest grossing film of all time during its release. Steven followed up this greatness with Jurassic Park, a 1993 sci-fi action film which eventually saw 3 more future releases in the series. The series has capped itself so far at 6 whole movies since, however, Steven was not included in the directing credits past the 1997 release. The creative soon made a smooth transition from adventure screen works to drama, releasing the 2-time Academy Award winning Schindler's List in 1993. Best Director Academy awarded Saving Private Ryan dropped in 1998 and was a huge successor and one of the biggest films of its year according to box office numbers. The movie also served as the second biggest movie in the world. Steven took on directing 2005's War of the Worlds, which grossed more than $591 million around the globe, marking Steven's sheer box office domination. In 2021, the world was gifted with Steven's Lincoln, which was nominated for the most Academy Awards of any film out that year at a whopping 12, and received much critical acclaim. 2015 was the year Steven directed Bridge of Spies, with a release date of October 2015 and a nomination for 6 Academy Awards. The following year, Steven co-produced and directed the part-animated fantasy adventure movie, The BFG, released in July 2016. Ready Player One dropped in March 2018 and served as a film adaptation of the popular sci-fi novel of the same name. This talented being has gone on to direct, produce, and pen more than a handful of the most successful films in history, and sits on a cushy fortune of $8 billion, further marking him as one of the richest film industry people ever. One of his biggest achievements includes founding Amblin Entertainment in 1981, creating the American film and TV production company that hosts a number of his and other fellow director and friends' major motion pictures. In 1994, Steven founded the studio DreamWorks SKG alongside David Geffen and Jeffrey Katzenberg, hosting a live-action and animation film space located on Universal Studios lot. DreamWorks has also distributed a ton of Amblin's productions. The famous filmmaker also received an honor from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences for their Irving G. Thalberg Memorial Award in 1986. Alongside this, Steven won the Director Guild of America Lifetime Achievement Award in 2004. This veteran creator was entered into the Science Fiction Hall of Fame in 2015, and in that same year was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by former US President Barack Obama. Like today's video if you recognize any of the films mentioned that Steven has worked on. Now let's discuss more about Steven's most recent project, The Fabelmans, and how it ties into today's video. According to just about every report on the internet, Steven's newest feature is a must-see. Of course, it's not the first time a movie has been created surrounding others' loves for movies in it, as that would be credited to Cinema Paradiso's for starting this way back in 1988. However, the most notable difference between other films touching on the subject and The Fabelmans is that the latter is directed by an absolute legend, one of the greatest to ever do it. The Fabelmans depicts itself as a semi-autobiographical film surrounding Steven's childhood and first experiences with cinema. His junior is taken on by the amazingly talented Gabriel LaBelle, who stunningly caught about every little nuance of the man behind the directing plan of the film. His parents are portrayed by Michelle Williams and Paul Dano. And if you thought The Fabelmans was just a movie about the love of cinema, think again. The motion picture expands far beyond just a small boy obsessed with moving images. It actually gives us a deeply broadening look at how much childhood plays such a major part in shaping someone's destiny, marital woes, and glimpses of faith practice. With Steven's leading, each specific layer of the character naturally unravels right before our eyes, whether they're simple or diviningly complex. The film also seems like a releasing experience for Steven, where it feels as if he's bearing his soul's regrets and thoughts to the world around him. Every actor and their performances are applauded, with Steven teaming up with one of his favorite filmmaking people, music composer John Williams, for the soundtrack. Their ability to blend sounds and harmoniously evoke endless emotions as the film follows the family through all their highs and lows was notable. Despite the argument of possibly being too simplistic, The Fabelmans is truly one of Steven's most honest and best works to date. Now, we've spent a good portion of this video praising Steven because absolutely deserved. However, with so many of his movies being successors, it's kinda hard to believe Steven even carries any box office misses in his career. Still, there have notably been a few reported, and it's time to unpack all of them. As The Fabelmans keep winning praise outside of its peaking 25 million box office sales, it's worthwhile to remember that Steven's creations haven't always been straight wins. Of course, he's had incredibly successful blockbusters in his times, like the Indiana Jones series, Jaws, E.T., and Jurassic Park to name a few, as aforementioned. In fact, the Indiana series dominated so well that the 5th run is slated to hit cinemas sometime this year, 42 years after the titular character's first on-screen appearance. However, life needs balance, and what's a load of success without a few misses? Like the reportedly cursed Twilight Zone movie, the 1942 film, or the much lesser known Sugarland Express alongside a handful of others. For starters, we'll get into 2016's The BFG, which was clever in its usage of creating a childhood cinematic favorite based on the work of another childhood literary favorite author, backed by a studio responsible for so many children's favorites memories growing up. This would also mark Steven's directorial debut with Disney. However, even with this seemingly unstoppable team-up of forces responsible for beloved fiction, The BFG only grossed $55 million at the box office, bringing in a global gross of $195.2 million, which doesn't equate to much value given its $140 million budget. Then we have 2012's West Side Story, the second adaptation of the 1957 stage musical, which brought in $48.5 million in the US and $37.4 million worldwide, marking the film a quote, box office disaster. The end result was astonishing given the leading of Steven's directing, Leonard Bernstein and Stephen Sondheim's musical additions, and the iconicness surrounding the story of the movie. Additionally, its critical acclaim was basically unanimous. Next up, we have 1979's 1941. This film featured an all-star cast, but was surprisingly regarded as one of Steven's most unsuccessful films of his entire career, reining in a mere $90 million worldwide on a budget of $31.5 million. Following that was 1989's Always, which opened the year up for Steven's other features, namely The Last Crusade and Indiana Jones. Coming off their collaboration of Jaws, Always was kind of rare for Steven because it was a remake featuring Richard Steven Dreyfuss. Unfortunately for both successors, the 1975 classic held its own, and its numbers and status cannot hold a flame to the original. Domestically, Always only saw $40.2 million internationally and $43.86 domestically. 1987 was the year Empire of the Sun was released as an adaptation of J.G. Ballard's book, grossing $22.4 million in the US and $67 million globally. This was again dubbed a commercial failure, especially when keeping in mind its $38 million budget. However, unlike Always, EOTS received much critical praise. In 1997, Steven's Amistad seemed like a promising opening, but only managed to earn $42.2 million in domestic box office sales and $50 million internationally. The response to this film was equally positive and negative. 1983's The Twilight Zone, the movie, was a film surrounding a highly loved TV series referred to as Kick the Can. As the second installment of the anthology movie, apart from being directed by Steven, there were three other widely talented directors, George Miller, Joe Dante, and John Landis. This film also didn't hold up at the box office, taking on $42 million worldwide and $29.5 million in US sales. The Sugar Land Express saw a release in 1974 and revolves around real events. Universal attempted to avoid box office clashings with The Sting and The Exorcist, choosing to debut this film in early April of that year. But the movie was still underwhelming in earnings, only making $13 million globally and $7.5 million in the US. However, even with all that, it simply cannot take away from the widespread acclaim and commendable success of all of Steven's incredible on-screen stories throughout his career, and that's all that really matters. That's been today's WATN. Thanks for watching, friends!